Well, the Alert Day coverage continues. Hi, everybody. Chief Meteorologist Kevin Harnett. Ryan Hoke is here. We're tracking tornado warning for Lawrence County. We thought this may be coming out. We were watching this storm. It's a slow-moving storm, only at about 20 miles an hour. Certainly has a hail core with it. Golf ball size hail or larger with that. We see the inflow to that storm, a nice hook showing up there. And this storm is moving right towards Spice Valley, Morristown, Hartleyville. We'll see where it goes as it moves closer to Bedford. Again, this tornado warning is in place until 7:15 this evening. I want to show you a view. We have two tornado warnings. This is what the velocity of that storm looks like. The other one is fading. That's just west of that and outside of the viewing area. Let me center this up, and I'm going to go back and point out just a couple of things. First of all, you'll notice across the entire viewing area, that is the only storm warning that we have within the Wave 3 or Wave viewing area. All right, and that is off to our north. As we continue to track this to the east, it'll eventually cross over into Lawrence County. So allow me to just zoom into that, and then we'll sort of pick it apart so you know what to expect. I know this is only impacting a very small part of our population, and again, it's Lawrence County, Indiana, Spice Valley, Bedford. This is the tornado warning. It's the lone storm that we have. It is the only tornado warning that we have in the viewing area and the first warning of the day. So this may go down as the only warning of the day. But again, we are tracking this right into Spice Valley. Now, let me zoom in just a little bit more, and then we're going to take a look at a couple of the sort of properties inside that storm from the radar, if you will, both velocity, hail, and the potential for any debris that may be showing up. Let me start by looking at that hail. On the hail scope, we can see inside the radar, giving an idea of how big the hail size could be. And again, we look at that darker blue, that's certainly up to quarter. At one point, it was ping pong ball size hail. When we look at the velocity on this storm, again, we'll just use the scope for this. In our velocity scope, you're going to see that rotation show up right there, approaching the Huron area. So that's where we have the greatest rotation. That too would move right over the Spice Valley location. When we look at what we would call the debris signature on this, and we'll just put that on full screen, what we'll be looking for is what we call the correlation coefficient. Do we have something that stands out, something that doesn't look like a typical raindrop that would be sort of scattering that wave back to the radar? And at this point, we do not see it, which is good news in there. So we're, again, scanning that. If we were to see it again, we'd be looking close to that center of rotation. So it should be somewhere within that area. When we look, we don't see the rotation. Good news there, but the debris, but we certainly see the rotation just north of Willow Valley, just now moving across that county line as it moves toward Huron and Spice Valley. The tornado warning, again, in place until 7:15. The only localized area would be Lawrence County, Indiana. You're under the tornado watch until 11 o'clock tonight. Jackson County under that watch as well. When we look at the radar view on this, not only do we have the rotation and the potential for some large hail now moving into Spice Valley with blinding rain. This is sitting just south of Indiana 450 and just to the north of US 50. So those are the bounds of that storm as it moves through Spice Valley and over toward Bryansville. This is not a confirmed tornado. It's radar indicated, and certainly we've seen the properties of the radar showing that. Ryan's looking and working with some of the data from the National Weather Service as well as storm spotters. Let's see if we have any sort of reports coming in. Ryan, I know it's brand new. This storm, while we've been watching it, it's just now become tornado warned, but anything to solidify that warning other than radar?
When it comes to the tornado part of that, no, we don't have any sort of reports of anything on the ground. However, we have had a report of ping pong ball size hail from this storm earlier. And I do want to speak to folks here in Louisville. Our severe weather threat is very low. Where you see this circle right here, basically north and northeast of Louisville, this is where we're going to have the maximum potential for any issues this evening, especially Lawrence and Jackson counties here because of that supercell storm that's now moving in just south of Bedford. Kevin, we're going to continue to monitor the National Weather Service chat here. In fact, I just just got a message here, confirmation of a wall cloud west of Mitchell, Indiana. So we've got folks on the ground watching this thing as we speak.
All right, that is from that storm. So they see the wall cloud. They see the storm is rotating. Now the question is, will it put down a tornado? It's certainly possible in the environment that we're in today. We have the warm front that's moving through the area. That provides enough rotation where we could see a spin-up tornado occur. It's clear by looking at just the reflectivity on this that we have the hook, the inflow into the storm, the potential for some hail that would now be falling across the county line. The tornado warning expands across a good chunk of Lawrence County, Indiana, and that is in place until 7:15. As Ryan mentioned, when you look at the home view, that is the only warning that we have. In fact, that's the only warning, and we frankly don't have a whole lot of storms outside of that area. We had one move through Jefferson County. That now continues to move through parts of Henry County up into Trimble and eventually Carroll County. That is not severe. The one lone severe thunderstorm that we currently have in Kentucky sits just north of Lexington and is moving away from us. So our focus is on southern Indiana. We mentioned that if you were watching the newscast earlier, that with that warm front, we would be concerned that we could spark not only a few thunderstorms, but that they would have the ability to rotate, and that's exactly what we're seeing at this point with a couple of storms, really, as they make their way off to the north and east. They're moving slow. 25 to 35 miles an hour is about their forward motion. Passing through Spice Valley at this point with the rotation. Again, the trend is to have seen this storm increase in intensity over the last few minutes, and we certainly have the couplet showing up on radar right through Spice Valley and Huron, and that would be right along US 50. As we move this to the north and east, next in line would be Hartleyville. All right, so Ryan's going to put a track on this and give you some of those cities in just a second. But before we do that, let me move back the radar. The one over toward Bramble is outside of our viewing area. Lawrence County, we pick up your coverage here. And again, you can see as the radars switch, this is where we have the greatest rotation moving across the county line. Spice Valley, Morristown would be also in the path of that, pushing up toward Hartleyville. That storm moving at 25 to 30 miles an hour, it's going to take a little bit of time, which is why when they drew that, they said, well, we're going to take that to 7:15. So it's about a half hour total on that warning time. Let's get a few of the locations in the path of this storm with the timing so folks watching in Lawrence County know when that storm should arrive in their backyard. Ryan?
All right, Kevin. Yeah, so this is the timing for when the tornado part of the storm, if there were to be one, will arrive at your location. Spice Valley, 6:58 p.m. Bryansville, 7:06, Coxton, 7:13. If it does turn north, which I don't think it will, Bedford would see it around, say, 7:24. I do think that the tornado part of this storm would stay just to yourself south there. Bono, you need to be on guard, even though you're not under the warning yet. If the storm arrives, it would be around, say, 7:37 Eastern time in Bono, southeastern parts of Lawrence County, Indiana, Kevin. So far, no confirmation, I should say, of a tornado on the ground with this, but it has been taking that right turn, which means it does have a lot of wind shear now to work with. So this is concerning for Lawrence County.
And no other storms around, so it's tapping into the open environment. Temperatures have cooled down in Bedford to 75. Southerly winds into that storm, though, pumping not only temperatures in the 80s into it, but plenty of moisture. Our winds anywhere between 5 to 10 miles an hour, a little stronger with the gust. These are dew points. There's plenty of moisture in the atmosphere. That's a signal of fuel for those storms as they continue to move in. And these are the two counties that are under tornado watch. That's Jackson and Lawrence until 11 o'clock. And clearly we have the tornado warning that has been issued until 7:15. It's the only storm that's severe in the viewing area. It's one of the only storms within the viewing area at this point. So we're tracking that storm. The folks in Lawrence County, equally as important to us as anybody. So we want to just say that we are watching this. And if you're in Spice Valley, time is out. You've got to be in your tornado safe place at this point. The storm will continue off to its north and northeast, roughly at about 35 miles an hour. It's forward speed. There's likely some hail within the northern side of this storm, anywhere between quarter to perhaps even as high as golf ball size hail. Wouldn't rule that out. Let's look at the rotation on this storm once again as we notice the velocity continuing to tighten in places. The latest scan showing that a little more diffused. So this would be where we would be watching right across between Spice Valley and Huron, and as it moves toward Bryantsville, next in the path, all right? So the latest scan of the rotation is what we would call a little more broad. It's not as intense. We've got a pocket of wind here. That'll be interesting to see what that does on the next scan. But as it appears, at least in this latest scan, the rotation is not as intense as it was. That doesn't mean as we get the later scans in that it will not tighten back up. Let's go into our scope here and let's just take a look, see if we can see any of that debris. When we look at that, we're looking for the potential for anything that may be within that storm that shouldn't be. And that can be debris that's lofted into the air. If there were to be an actual tornado, sometimes our first indication comes from the radar, especially in rural areas. We're not seeing that, so that's good news, all right? So we're just scanning the radar, using the radar tools both with reflectivity, velocity that you see there, the reflectivity that you see here. Losing the pink out of that storm means the hail cores are falling just a bit. That's a lower chance for hail, but still some very heavy rain within that band as it moves. We still have the inflow into the storm. It's still separated enough from the other storm that it's not only picking up on some of those strong southerly winds and the moisture being pumped into it, but it still has decent structure in terms of what it looks like on the radar. And certainly if folks are reporting the wall cloud in person, because storm chasers and fire officials and emergency personnel are on the screen, on the streets, watching that storm that you're looking at on the screen. They're saying that that is what they're seeing. Let's go over to Ryan Hoke, see if he has any new information related to this tornado warning in Lawrence County, Indiana.
Okay, Kevin. Yeah, at this point, we are tracking the latest on the hail from folks who are reporting it on MPing. MPing is basically an app that you can download for your phone that allows you to make hail, tornado, and other types of reports and report it to, of course, us and the federal government here. You'll see that there has been at least one quarter-size hail report. We also have confirmation from emergency management that ping-pong ball-size hail has been reported just west of Lawrence County with this storm. I've been looking at the overall environment that this storm is in as well, and it's going to take, not too long to get this storm to start to collapse in on itself here, just because we're starting to see, the sun starting to set just a little bit here, and overall the environment, especially as you go south of Lawrence County, is just not very conducive here. This is why we're not seeing a whole explosion of multiple thunderstorms. This is why we're seeing just a few of these storms trying to pop at this point. The environment just isn't there for that right now. So if you're watching from Louisville, we've already had a thunderstorm move through. I don't think Louisville's going to be in line for much more this evening. So basically north of Louisville, that's the problem child. And even these storms near Carrollton and near Henry County are behaving, thankfully, Kevin, here. So really, it's just Lawrence and Jackson counties that we're going to continue to monitor with this.
Yeah, I think once those lift to the north, we won't have much to worry about this evening. So folks that have plans saying, well, what's that mean for us? Not a lot. Most areas, as we were explaining in our earlier newscast, will not see rain at all today. A few may get a brief downpour, and then there'll be a few others that see the strong storms like we're tracking here across Lawrence County. Again, this storm becoming a little more diffused. You can even see that based on the reflectivity. That's a good sign. It means it's starting to weaken just a bit. It's not as organized as it was. You certainly don't see the hook that you once saw. The inflow's a little less pronounced. And I suspect that as time goes, maybe even before the 7:15 end time, that this tornado warning may expire early. So we just have to check the velocities as we look. We still see some velocity within that. Looks like there may be a even slight transition to take that further to the north, but the main area of heavy rain is within that corridor right along Indiana 450. So if we were to see that rotation, it would be very close to Spice Valley, still approaching the Bryantsville area. That's the area of most concern. Again, some gusty winds, heavy wind possible. A heavy rain is a guarantee. The hail, it's not a guarantee, but it's certainly possible too, especially with some smaller hail within that heaviest of the rain. Still very warm, so we melt a lot of that hail as it comes to the ground. When we look back to our home home view. Let me put the radar on, and then we'll go back to the home view across the area. With that, you're going to notice, again, this one lone supercell in the viewing area, while we have other storms over toward Carrollton, pushing through parts of Henry County and Carroll County, lifting to the north. It's 83 in Louisville. Our winds are south at 7 miles an hour. No storms here, and a few others over toward Lexington, one severe as you work your way toward the north of Lexington. So that's outside of our viewing area as well. So as Ryan pointed out, when we look at maybe where we would see any type of severe weather, it would be north of that zone there, all the way up into central Indiana, perhaps, as the warm front continues working to the north. But in the immediate concern, it is for Lawrence County, and this is for the Tornado 1 storm that we have moving across Lawrence County at this point. Again, diffusing out. If this trend continues, we'll move right into Wave News coming up here in just a minute, and we'll be able to keep you updated throughout that as well. All right, so I suspect this warning will be let go early, and then we'll be able to just monitor this. Ryan?
Yeah, I got some new information here from Lawrence County Dispatch. They do not have any major reports, quote unquote, of damage at this time. So that's some good news, and that's kind of what we expect. We haven't seen any sort of radar evidence that a tornado has actually touched down, Kevin.
All right, that's certainly some good news. If, again, the trend continues like that, things will be easing. We have had the alert day in place for the fear that we could see some rogue warnings like this, especially along that warm front today. And this is the first and likely the only warning that we'll see out of this system for today. Other downpours may still be possible to our east, but those too will be lifting north and moving out of the viewing area. Looking ahead to the next several days, we've got another alert day for tomorrow. More storms that could be on the strong to severe side late afternoon and evening for our Thursday, which is a big day at the racetrack for Thurby. Of course, Oaks and Derby. Severe chances look less those days, but the rain chances still persist. So we'll be keeping an eye on that as well. All right, just going to zoom in one more time here as we continue to track this storm just to make sure. And in that latest scan, you can see it came back just a little bit. Let's check the velocity on that to see if it's tightened up at all, just a little bit. So there is still some potential there. We'll let this warning work its way through. Again, rotation moving toward the Bryantsville area. Hartleyville would be also in the line as it crosses over US 50. That's the zone we're watching across Lawrence County at this point. Again, tornado warning until 7:15 for folks that are watching. You may be asking, when the radar's here, why is it green? When I lift it north, why is it red? Again, different radars looking at the data. The green means winds toward the radar, red away. And so depending on which radar we're looking at, that changes. But the data does not necessarily, and that just means that we do have the rotation showing up still. Ryan, what do you have?
Okay, let's talk about timing again with this kind of northward jog that we've seen here with the latest scans. Wanted to give you the latest on what we're thinking on storm arrival time in your location. Bedford, you're already starting to see some light rain, but the core of this storm would arrive at 7:25, Coxton 7:14, Bryantsville 7:09, Buda, Indiana 7:31, Heltonville that's 7:43. You see the new, of course, tornado warning box they've just redrawn there just to make this exclusively Lawrence County. So they are going to continue that warning until 7:15, it looks like, Kevin.
Yeah, and it says it's capable of producing, but it's not confirmed. This is about 10 miles southwest of the Bedford area. So again, Bedford up here, south and west of Bedford is where we have that. This storm is moving east at 20 miles an hour. So it's a slow mover. Again, no reports coming in. We can check those storm reports. We've had none across the area, so good news in terms of that. When we go back to the radar view, we'll point out that not only do we have heavy rain and the potential for hail with that storm, but still seeing some rotation moving toward Bryantsville. The only storm in the viewing area that is severe is the storm that we're tracking. Other storms exist back over to our north and east. I'll zoom into those just briefly so we can see where we have those. Moving across Henry County, north of Eminence, Campbellsburg, moving to Carrollton. A new storm trying to develop across Clark County, that's Charlestown. Now, that one is just now beginning to develop, and we'll continue to see some of these storms across southern Indiana intensify as they lift to the north. Additional downpours may be starting to develop across southern parts of Washington County, south of Salem. And again, I'll just keep pointing out the only severe storm is the tornado warning in Lawrence County. It's 7:03 right now. We've got another 12 minutes left on this warning, set to expire coming up at 7:15. When we look at the severe thunderstorm warning that's just now coming out, let's just see where that's for. As we go, you can see this is going to be over toward Franklin County, so it clips the extreme eastern part of our viewing area. That's eastern Franklin County. Scott and Woodford County also in that. That is the storm that's moving through Versailles, lifting through Nugent Crossroads. That's going to lift up. Notice the lightning with that. So we have lightning. Let's see if we have any hail with that storm as it moves past. We'll look at our hail scope for that. This storm has the potential for gusty winds, but let's see if it has any hail with it. There's a little bit showing up. That could be up to nickel-size hail possible with that storm. All right, so that severe thunderstorm warning until 7:45. It barely clips our viewing area. That's the eastern part and the far eastern part of Franklin County. Back to the tornado warning that we have. This one showing signs of rotation pushing toward Bryantsville. You should be in your tornado safe place. That's one area. Was going to go into the scope and just see on the velocity again if that's tightened up any more from the last time we left it. And you can see that rotation showing up right very close to Bryantsville as expected. That will continue tracking to the east. Again, Bedford here. The storm is about 15 miles off to the south and west, moving at 20 miles an hour. So it's, it's taking its time. But if it continues, Rabbitville and just north of Mitchell would be in that. This storm should go right between Bedford and Mitchell. Bedford's going to get some heavy rain out of it, the possibility of some hail as well. The greatest chance for a tornado, if that were to happen, would be now moving right into Bryantsville, moving right up US 50. The other storms developing on the radar that I pointed out have the potential to grow in intensity over the course of the next hour or so, but after that, the trends would really weaken those storms and take it down. The atmosphere will not be in a prime shape to see those storms continue to develop past 8 o'clock tonight. Let's go over to Ryan Hoke.
Okay, Kevin, I continue to track what's going on a little closer to the Louisville metro area here. We do have that one lone cell trying to develop near Henryville. No lightning with that yet. It's not even strong. And then these cells moving through parts of Henry County and Carroll County. They're right along US 421. These are not severe as well. We, of course, have our SkyTrack network of cameras, and I've pointed our camera here in Jeffersonville due north. You'll see that show up. There it is. And you can see that one storm near Henryville, very low topped at this time, so I don't think that's going to do anything in the next 5 minutes, but we'll watch it over the next, say, 10 to 15 minutes there, Kevin, making sure we've got everybody involved in this coverage here in our viewing area.
Yeah, while severe weather is going to be limited tonight, the tornado warning is out. It's why we're on the air. Wave News at 7 is standing by. So as soon as we can get out of tornado warning coverage, we'll get you caught up on the day's news. And boy, there's been a lot of that from across the area. And of course, it's Derby week, and we understand that. And what a busy Derby week in terms of weather it is. And that is something that we're going to be tracking, the chance for severe weather, not just yesterday, not just today, but tomorrow as well. Oaks Day holds this another storm chance, and Derby Day holds at least a rain chance. So we're working hard this week to make sure we have the most up-to-date information for all of the viewers that are not only viewing us on a daily basis, but those in town as well. You can see Bryantsville, and by the way, if you're in town, the storm we're tracking is well away from Louisville. It's across the northern part of our viewing area. This takes you up into parts of southern Indiana, not about equidistance from Indianapolis and Louisville here. So we're talking up the road several miles. So Bryantsville is in the path of this. This is going to move over toward Indiana 37. It's right on top of US 50. We'll track this storm over toward Rabbitville, moving at 20 miles an hour. This storm is creeping along, but it is capable of producing some strong winds. Back to the radar and the reflectivity that we have, and let me put this into motion so you can see what this has looked like over the last couple of hours. And its development has sort of come and gone. You can see it's not as intense as it was. Notice the core at one point of that storm, the deep purple, indicating some very strong updrafts in the storm, which promote the hail growth that we've had. And we've maintained that hook for the majority of its life, and that's the inflow. So that shows that we have a supercell. It shows that that storm is rotating, and we know that not only based on the radar indications, but we know it because storm spotters are on the ground, and they actually see the wall cloud of this storm as it's moving through. It has not dropped a tornado at this point, so it's radar indicated, not confirmed, and that will continue to be the case unless the storm really starts to ramp up in intensity and puts down a tornado. But at this point, we're just about 7 minutes away from the expiration. We have seen some hail reported with the storms across the area today. Let's go over to Ryan Hoke.
Okay, yeah, we got a couple of new things here. Sirens are now going off in Bedford for a second time, so emergency management in Lawrence County continuing to sound those sirens. We've also got a storm chaser live feed. We can't show it on the air. However, it shows nothing worse than a wall cloud, according to some folks who have been watching that. And we've had that wall cloud also reported near the Mitchell area there within the past about 10 minutes or so when the storm was a bit stronger. So all of that said, we've got folks on the ground watching this, and so far nothing has touched down, and we really don't think that's going to be in the cards here, Kevin.
Yeah, that's the good news. We've got 5 more minutes left on the tornado warning. We still see the inflow. We still see the structure of the storm that is rotating. But when you look at the sort of the data inside the storm, meaning the wind velocity and the speed with this, we have no tight couplet any longer. At one point, it was much tighter, and that was the reason and the thought behind the tornado warning. And while it's still there, it is much broader. Now, that doesn't mean it will not tighten back again, but as we track that, it just hasn't over the last several scans, which would stand the bet that we would be not completely in the clear, but certainly getting closer to that as this storm moves farther to the north. Eventually, this will move out of the viewing area. It just happens to be a very slow-moving storm as it progresses eastward at 20 miles an hour. Let me go back to the radar view, and I'll zoom out, and we'll look back to the storm just across the river to see how it's doing.
Severe thunderstorm warning.
So this is
possible there.
Coming out to replace the tornado warning that we have in place across Lawrence County, and this will be a severe thunderstorm warning with that tag or the threat that comes in as tornado possible. This includes Bedford, Mitchell, and Oolitic. This will be traveling to the east as well. Wind speeds within this storm up to 60 miles an hour, possibility of some hail within that storm as well. So the good news is, as we transition, they've seen what we've been talking about as well, and that is all thinking is on the same line. The rotation is now broad enough to say a tornado doesn't look as likely, but it's still possible. And as we progress toward the end of the tornado warning, let's move it into a severe thunderstorm warning with that tag of tornado possible, and we'll take it across the rest of the county. That may move into western parts of Jackson County. We'll be watching this storm. There's still a chance as it moves into an untapped atmosphere that it could re-strengthen or tighten up and go back to a tornado-warned storm. Okay, it's at this point in the weakening phase. That doesn't mean it will weaken completely before it upticks again. 4 more minutes left on the warning. At 7:15, we're going to get to Wave News at 7 o'clock. Noel Friel standing by for that, along with the rest of our team. I'm going to zoom back into the warning that we have. This is the tornado warning, and this is the rotation. You can still see that it's there, so can't ignore it completely. That's going to travel over toward just north of Rabbittville. It will continue over toward Buda and Crawford as the time moves on. I was about to take us to the radar and then sort of scan the skies as we look back to our home view of what to expect in parts of southern Indiana and northern Kentucky. At this point, much of central Kentucky is in the clear. I don't suspect we're going to see much storm development down that way at all. However, across southern Indiana, there is a chance that we would wind up seeing a few of these storms and extreme northern Kentucky. So let's talk about those. Moving north into Henry County, up into Carrollton, these storms probably your last gasp as those lift to the north. The one in northern Clark County will push into Scott County, increasing in size but not so much in intensity. By far the strongest storm we have is the one in Lawrence County at this point. That one continues to move to the east and slightly to the northeast. That's moving roughly at about 20 miles an hour, and the velocity in that storm shows that we do still have some rotation. Ryan, let's get one more update from you, and then we'll wrap this up as this tornado warning comes to an end and progresses into the severe thunderstorm.
Yeah, so many folks on our severe weather live stream right now. Wave Weather Now, our 24/7 weather channel, I should say. They are really online. And some folks are also commenting on YouTube and Facebook asking, hey, is Louisville going to get any rain from this? And the answer is no. All of this is all to the north and northeast of us at this time, so we are not going to see any more rain here in Louisville for the rest of the evening. And the storms that you see northeast of Louisville, they're not severe. And of course, we continue to watch that Franklin County storm skirting just east of Frankfort. They're basically due north, and that'll be over the next few minutes that happens, Kevin.
All right, and while we may not be in for any type of rain or severe weather tonight, our chances reset again tomorrow, and all of us will be back in play for severe weather as we bring that front closer to us on Thursday. So you have to remain weather aware, as we say, moving through the next at least 24 to 36 hours with the chances for showers and thunderstorms persisting. We'll take this storm, move it through Yawkey, push it over toward Buda with that wind and the heavy rain threat for sure. They're getting some just massive amounts of rain from Coxton to Bedford, even Yawkey seeing that rain. That pushes north of Mitchell, so you've missed out on the chunk of rain here, but the threat of the tornado, should that happen, would be closer to you, pushing from Lawrenceport to Buda in Lawrence County. Less than a minute left on this warning. One more check of the velocity. We do see that we have the rotation approaching Yawkey. No confirmed tornado at this point. One more check of the debris just to be sure nothing is being lofted into the atmosphere that shouldn't be there. There is potential that we could see. Let me go back to that on the last view. Just double checking. I'm concerned with that area. As we're looking at that, Ryan, I'll ask you to look as well.
I'm not so sure that's debris at this time. I need one more scan to determine that.
Need another scan of the, you almost have to loop that to see. So what we were seeing is that, first of all, we noticed this tightening just a bit, and then on the debris, which mine is stationary, and I could play it out, but it's going to play a whole loop here. What we want to see on this would be that blue color would mean that there's something in there that shouldn't be. Now, the question is that a false return, or is it kicking up something that shouldn't be there? And that's a big question. So while we're determining that, let's just stop the radar and give it one more scan before we come back around. Have you seen anything from emergency personnel or any calls that have been made, Ryan?
No, nothing so far yet. Everything's been quiet, and it's a situation where so many eyes are on this thing. The minute this happens, we'll know about it. So this could be kind of a false thing here, but we'll see how it goes over the next scan.
All right, we'll continue to watch that. Let's, as the warning comes to an end, you see we're in the severe thunderstorm warning at this point. Back to the radar we go. We'll give that another scan, and we'll watch that as we track this storm off. At this point, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, there's Wave News at 7 o'clock. That'll take us to 8, and we'll certainly have not only an update on this storm, but the rest of the Derby Week forecast coming up right after this. Stay with us.